welcome to my at-home studio. Today we're going to be going over the basics of sawing, and I'm going to be sawing out a nameplate, which in the classes we normally teach would lead to something like nameplate necklace, where you would put something like this together using jump rings and a mini torch. But for today we're just going to use it to practice sawing. Now what I'm going to show you is how to transfer an image from paper onto the metal. So if you're doing this at home, it doesn't have to be your name. You can print something out from the computer or do a drawing in a sketchbook and then cut it out. So the basic tools that you're going to need are a jeweler's saw frame. And with that, you're going to need saw blades. Now, the blades come in a numbered order. So 2-0 would be thicker, 6-0 would be thinner, and then between there is 3-0 and 4-0. So when you're first learning, 2-0 is a really great blade to learn on because they don't break as easily. However, because they're thicker and you are pushing the saw through metal, sometimes it can make it a little bit more difficult to get smooth lines. So as you progress, you do want to start to move down. I prefer the 4-0 myself. It's also better for working with golds because it creates less kerf, which means dust from the metal. So the other tools that you'll need to clean up your pieces are a file. Now it doesn't have to be the large one, the small ones are fine as well, but having a flat side and a round side would be preferable. You're gonna need a base metal sheet to work from, so copper, nickel, or brass would be the base metals. And then optional, if you have a flex shaft, that's amazing, because then you can get into these little inside areas here. If you don't, then just work on cutting things from the outside. But if you have a flex shaft, you're gonna need safety goggles, obviously, about a 1mm drill bit. Smaller is okay, bigger gets a little bit hard to drill through. A hammer that you're going to use with a scribe. So I'm going to switch over now so that you guys can see me work on my bench pin. So the first thing we're going to be using is called rubber cement. So rubber cement is a great way to transfer the paper onto the metal. It holds onto it really, really well. Now, if you've done a drawing at home and you're worried about losing that drawing, making a photocopy if you can is great. So rubber cement is a really tacky glue, and it actually works better if you let it dry for a minute before you attach the two sides together. So don't put too much on, and you're gonna put a little bit on one side and a little bit on the other side. I had a lot of extra on there. So for those of you at home, you're gonna sit and let it dry for a minute until it's tacky, not wet, and then it holds it together really beautifully. So I've pre-cut out this sheet here from this larger one, which takes longer when you don't have a shear at home. So having something where you do have a little extra metal to hold on to is a good idea, especially for drilling. So don't go ahead and cut everything off too quickly, but having a sheet that is larger than your bench pin might be difficult. And for those of you at home, if you don't have jewelry benches, Rio Grande has these really great clamp-on bench pins that actually come with a steel block attached to it. And the steel block is going to be helpful for when we're using our scribe to drill in. They're about, I think, $13 to $15, and you can clamp them to any surface, so they're amazing. So mine's pretty tacky. We're going to go ahead and put these together. Great. Okay, so now, like I said, having more metal to hold on to makes drilling much easier. So we're going to drill into these inside areas here first. So what we have to do for that is I'm going to place my copper onto a steel block. If you don't have a steel block, that's okay. You can do this on any surface, but a harder surface is going to work much better. So I'm going to take my scribe and my hammer. Now I'm not trying to get through the metal with the scribe, so it's just one little dap, and the scribe has that pointy end there. So don't put this directly on your line, because when you drill through, you'll end up with a little circle negative space there, like someone took a bite out of your piece. But if you put it in the center, you just have a lot more work to saw. So somewhere around here is perfect. So just one, not more than that. One. So if you're doing this at home and you don't have a drill bit, you can just leave those negative spaces as positive. Or choose to do something else. You could do an outline of an animal, is really fun. I've done rabbit necklaces before, so you can sort of start prepping these pieces so that you'll be able to work on them later. So what I'm going to do now is load my drill bit into my flex shaft. So we're gonna take the chuck key on the side here and unscrew. Now the flex shaft is foot pedal operated. You always want to go slow. You're driving in a school zone, not on the highway. Going quick runs out your motor and it doesn't actually get more work done. It just heats things up quickly. So it's always pressure, not speed. There we go. Okay. So the spindles of the drill bit don't go inside, but it's also not sticking out too much either. So just like that is great. So now at home, I'm going to put on my safety goggles, which you can't see, but whenever you're using the flex shaft, safety goggles and having your hair back are really important, especially right now when maybe no one wants to go to the hospital. So what I'm going to do is take a seat and set myself up so that the heel of my hand, and let's rotate this so you can see. The heel of my hand is going to rest on the bench pin like that. And then I'll slowly drill in. So I'm not holding it all the way up here because what happens is it pushes through and then you end up pushing your flex shaft into your metal instead of having control. So you're like a drill press. Okay. So just go slow and take your time. If it feels like it's taking a long time, that's okay. Keep it moving slowly. Now, the reason we put those little scribe marks in is if you don't, when the drill bit hits the metal, it doesn't have a place to go into. So all it does is it dances across the surface and it can break, which is why it's so important that you have your safety goggles on in case something like that or a little piece of metal flies off. And we're gonna just keep pushing in. Beautiful. So now I've got my holes there and you'll see what that's for a little bit later. Let's talk about loading in our saw blade. You want to load the saw teeth in so that they're down towards the blade. So one side has no blade and one side has them going down. When we load in our saw blades, we need them to be really tight. So if you just bought a saw for the first time, you want to set this length up so that from this little notch here and this little notch here is a little bit longer than your saw blade. So your saw blade without putting tension should hit about there. So I'm going to load my bottom in first and I'll show you what I mean by that. In order to load the bottom of the blade in, what we're going to do you're going to push the saw into your bench pin. So don't push it in here because now I can't move this, and don't push it in from here because if you push it in here you're pushing the bottom, and the whole point is to bring this side and this side closer together. So I'm going to load it up right on the edge there. So if I feel with my fingers, up my finger catches, down it doesn't, and I'm going to load this blade into the bottom first. We never use this guy to tighten it. Once you set that up, you're done. So you can see here that my blade almost reaches the top, but not quite. So now I'm going to use that to push in and tighten it. So one thing that is difficult is pushing into your sternum can hurt at first. So what I like to do is take my pinky finger, wrap it around the bottom of the saw, and then you're pushing into your hand into your sternum instead of the bottom of the blade. And you want to hear that really nice crisp sound. So that means that you've got your blade in tight. Anything else, anything duller is not going to be good. So we're going to start sawing into our metal. Now you want to sit as straight as possible. And the way you're going to set your hands up, you're never going to saw out here just holding down like that because that's going to get really tiring on your arm. And your metal can bend, which means if your metal bends, your blade breaks. So keep in mind that this blade is very fragile. If you don't stay straight up and down, you're going to keep snapping blades. So that's really important that you're totally perpendicular to the bench pin. So what we're going to do is set it up in the middle of this little corner here, this little triangle, which you can see I have a couple of for different purposes. One finger goes on one side, one finger comes from the back. And what you can't see that's happening is my thumb underneath is dictating where the blade goes. There's no teeth on this side, so I can use that as a control. So we're going to start sawing to the O, and then we'll make a turn. So remember that your saw blade is a rectangle. So if you try to turn without cutting, what happens is that the blade is just going to snap. So the rule is, in order to move the blade, you have to be pulling down. So you have to be cutting your way through. Okay, so I'm at my edge there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay in place and start to move my blade in a circle. And I'm only going to tilt it as I'm pulling down. And while I'm doing that, the hand that's sawing is pulling back a little bit. So down, down, twist, down, twist, down, twist, down, twist, down, twist, down, twist, down, twist. So what I've done is I've just created essentially the same thing as a drill hole, and I can go anywhere I want now. So let's make our way around the bottom of the O. So I'm not pulling down that hard. I'm very lightly just letting the blade do the work. Now I'm holding on so lightly that I could actually hold the saw with 2 fingers. That's how little I'm pulling. And I'm just keeping my left hand in good control with my thumb clamped underneath. So let's go around this O. Now, every time my fingers rotate to be in the line of the saw, I'm going to switch where my hand is so that I'm never in danger of the saw hitting my fingers. Okay. So we're at the top of this really tight corner, this little hairline turn here. So if I make that twist like I did before to get into my O, what's going to happen is I'll have a little circle at the top. And that's a pretty big indicator of maybe someone that isn't as practiced with the saw. So what I'm going to do is be thoughtful about this and pull back and move to the other side of my L. So instead, I'm going to do that twist down here because I don't care about this area. And then go to the other side. Now again, I'll make the twist where it doesn't matter. And you can see when I did that, I didn't move forward at all. It's just a tiny hole. And now come back up and we'll have a really clean, crisp corner at the top. So go slowly so you can match up your lines and try not to go past where your line is. So what I'm doing now is I did get to my line, but there was a little bump there. And what you can do is actually with your 2 fingers, hold onto the saw and push the side of the saw so it acts as a file. And that's the best way to file into small areas like that. So now I can twist it and carry on. And you're just going to go all the way around. So that's for the outside of your O. But if I were you, I would start on the inside area and then move to the outside. So again, you have more to hold on to and it's not too flimsy. So let's load our saw into one of these holes. So we're going to open up our blade, pull this down. Now make sure you're pulling it all the way down to the bottom, because if you leave it here, it's got some pressure. You see it, and it's going to pull down, you won't get a tight saw blade. So now I'm on the inside of my O, and I can cut these out. So for the 2 corners, I'll do the same thing I did with the L. Let's come over to the edge here. And again, I don't want that to have any sort of turn. So I'll come from this side. The best way to save yourself time on filing is to do a really good job sawing. So practice is everything. Now I just went against my rule because of the way I was holding it, and I started sawing towards my finger, but I made extra sure that my saw would hit wood before it ever came near my finger. Also, being perpendicular to your bench pen is going to help so that you're never in a situation where you don't notice your finger. So this is what it looks like from the back, and you can see I did a really nice job on those corners. Maybe this one I'd go in a little bit more and get it crisper, but it's not too bad. So I'll finish this up and then we'll move on to the cleaning.